Just unmuting myself. Allison, I have promoted you to a panelist so that we can spotlight you.
Awesome, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, let me, oh, there I am. Get myself on gallery view here. I think I'll take this off for this presentation.
All right, it's 2:00. I think we're all here. Good afternoon. Welcome to the reporting webinar. My name is Parul Patel. I'm the Associate Grants Officer for the Quality of Life Grants Program here at the Foundation. This webinar is being recorded. You will be provided a link upon request if you would like to view it again or if you'd like to share this. A note before we begin, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box. Hopefully we'll get through all your questions before the end of this webinar. If not, please email all your questions to qol@reeve.org. So let's begin. Okay. These are the due dates and the reports due for the awarded grant cycles. For all awarded projects with a less than 24-month timeline, we require 2 reports, the interim and the final reports. For all projects with a 24-month timeline, we require 2 additional reports, the 6-month and the 18-month check-ins, for a total of 4 reports. And the due dates are December 31st for these reports here, and then January 31st, 2024 for these reports here. Today, I'll be going over the report reminder emails, how to access the report in Founded, and provide guidance on how to complete the required reports, including financial reporting and budget revisions with some examples to clarify. So 30 days before the report due date, our grants portal, Founded, will send an automated email report due reminder for each report for each cycle, that the report is due. This is an example of a 6-month check-in, as you will note right here on the subject line. By default, the applicant is the point of contact, the main point of contact. All required reports are assigned to the person who submitted the application in Founded. This person has the login credentials and will get all direct as well as automated emails from Founded. This is why it is important to notify us if this person leaves the organization or is no longer responsible for the grant. By clicking on this blue phrase here, Grants Portal, you will be forwarded into the Founded. There's a embedded link to Founded within these 2 words here. So by clicking Grants Portal, you will be brought to this page. This is the logon page, and on the right-hand side is our QOL email address. If you have any difficulties accessing the portal, please to reach out to us through this email. So once you log in, you will be brought to your dashboard. So the process right here, 2023 expanded, is the cycle, and below it are the follow-up forms, all the forms that are due, forms or reports that are due within this cycle. Each report shows the assigned to person, the due date, and the status. So assigned status means nothing has been done. And as you can see, I highlighted this December 31st This is the first report that's due, and hence the button under action says start. Once you start the report, if you need to exit and finish up later, please remember to save the report so as not to lose any updates you've made. Once you go back, you will see the status changed from assigned to draft. When you return, you can resume and update by clicking the draft button. When finished, you must hit the submit button for us to receive it. You can confirm this by going back into the dashboard and confirming that it does say submitted. Once you have submitted the report, you will not be able to edit. Should you need to edit the report after its submission, you can easily reach out to me or QOL, and we will revert the status for you to make the update. And once I receive the report, if everything is okay and the report is approved, then it will be marked complete. And again, you can go back to your dashboard to verify. Okay, so these are the reporting questions for the 6-month check-in. All questions for the check-in reports are the same. No matter which report you're working on, the project results are evaluated against the proposed or revised activities, outcomes, and budgets. So the intent of this check-in report is to inform us of the year-to-date progress of the project. It's a simple form, just 2 questions. The project name and the amount awarded would be pre-populated. It'll pull this information from your proposal. Question 1 deals with the timeline. So is your project on schedule? What are the significant accomplishments relative to the proposed activities? Are there any issues we should be aware of that may or have made an impact to the project or the timeline? Keep your response simple. You don't need to include every single detail. For example, if this would be a sample response. The project is on schedule, no issues to report at this time. As per the proposed timeline, we have ordered the equipment and have started the project outreach efforts and recruiting volunteers. That's it. It could be as simple as that. If it's not on schedule, please include the reasons for the delay, the impact on the project, and any plans you have to compensate for the timeline difference. An example, the proposed exercise equipment is no longer available, right? That's why you're experiencing a timeline change. So we are working with the vendors to locate comparable equipment and similar pricing. We will reach out to the Reeve Foundation for the approval of the equipment change and pricing. At this time, we do not know the extent of the impact on the project timeline and outcomes. However, we will provide ongoing updates to the foundation as needed. That would be your sample response for the timeline change. Now, the next question is project changes. Please note, per the grant agreement, all changes to the proposed project must be pre-approved by the foundation in writing. This can be done through sending me an email at ppatel@reeve.com. If there's no changes, or if you do not expect any changes, you can enter NA. But if you have the foundation approved changes, you can state what the change was, state the anticipated change, or if you are anticipating a change, then you can state that anticipated change here and why it is needed. Upon my review, I will reach out to follow up with the change and process whatever that needs to be processed. For example, like a budget or a change in equipment or change in timeline. And that's it. This is the 6 and 18-month check-in report, just 2 questions. All right. So the next report will, I would like to cover is the interim reports. The interim reporting is for 6, 9, and 12-month progress. This is a similar email to the previous one, except we've added this red letter note here. All project changes must be approved by the foundation prior to reporting. Do not submit this report if a budget revision is needed. Contact ppatel@reeve.org. Please, and then please use the expense file Excel, which is shared on the Foundant dashboard. So in the past, what was happening is the files submitted, the expense file is a required document to be submitted with the interim report and final report. The issue was that these files did not contain the pre-approved budget. So we decided to mitigate the incidence of errors by providing the applicant the approved budget by sharing it under documents within the dashboard. So, So this is a dashboard that contains an interim report due by December 31st. As you can see right here under documents uploaded by administrator, this is where we share the budget files. As with the check-in reports, all similar to that, all interim questions are the same. Again, the project name and the amount awarded will be pre-populated. Here, similar to the check-in report question, question 1 has a yes or no option. If your project is on schedule, then you would select yes and enter no. NA in the next section. If there is a delay, you would select no here and you would state your reasons for the delay and its impact on the project and the plans to compensate. In addition to the example I gave earlier, your sample response could be the adaptive chairs were received later than anticipated, which caused a delay in the project timeline by 2 months. However, we will offset this delay by increasing the number of classes offered at this time in the time remaining. This will ensure that our goal of offering 8 classes is met and close out the project as scheduled. Again, that was just a sample example of a response. Okay. The next question is project accomplishments. So this is where you will need to list the year-to-date accomplishments relative to the proposed activities, like equipment was ordered and received, participants are using the chairs. Year-to-date, they have used the chairs during 2 wheelchair basketball games. Again, please keep it simple. It is not necessary to itemize in granular details. For project changes sections, which is the next question here, you will note any approved modifications like budget revisions, changes in quantity, scope, etc., and its impact on the project. A sample response would be if you propose to purchase 4 wheelchairs, but purchase less, then you would state something like the actual unit cost of the proposed chairs was higher than anticipated. The vendor cited an increased manufacturing cost and did not honor the quote. As such, we were only able to purchase 3 of the 4 proposed chairs with the awarded funds. However, since we were able to purchase additional chairs using internal funds, there will be no impact on the project. And this was communicated to the foundation. So that's what a sample response would look like. So this is a mandatory item, financial reporting. For this section, again, please use the shared expense file from your dashboard and update with the expenses and attach the updated file. The recurring issues that I'm seeing is a blank file being attached. I suggest whoever updates the file, that they save the file with a different name. And then to ensure that this, that the file that's being attached is not a blank file, and it is the updated with expenses. Okay. So this is an example of a typical hypothetical itemized approved budget for 18,500. So based on this budget, if an expense file that looks like this was submitted, would not be accurate. Why? Because the total approved amount is 18,000 instead of 18,500, which would indicate that the correct file that was shared was not used, or that this total was written over, albeit by unintentionally. The second reason would be the $9,000 here under the interim expense column is a lump sum. So we require that all expenses be itemized as per the approved budget line items. In this case, I would have to revert the report back to draft, and then the applicant would need to update the file and resubmit the report. So if the previous expense file was corrected and resubmitted that looks like this is okay. This would be accepted because now it has the 18,500 correct budget, and all of the 9,000 amount expensed is correctly itemized. The thing I want to stress is we manage and report only on what we fund. So that said, sometimes though, you may need to use other funding streams to cover if there's an increase in cost. And you may want to reallocate the funds within the project and have the project absorb the additional cost. So if in this budget, for example, if the two laptops, instead of 3,000, the actual came in at 4,000, and you were using other funding streams like internal funds, other foundation grants to offset the $100,000 increase, then limit your expense only to 3,000, which is the amount that was funded by us. However, if you are planning to have this project absorb the additional costs, then we would need to do a budget revision. Because in order to increase this by 1,000, you would have to decrease any of these budget lines, one or multiple lines, by 1,000 to offset that increase. You would then, and please make sure that all the increases or the allocations are approved before incurring the actual expense. Because we need to verify that the expense that you're wanting to make is an allowable expense. So here again, if you are planning on this project to absorb the cost, please to reach out to me at ppatel@reeve.org and submit your budget revision. And the last questions, not more like a question, it's more informational. This is an opportunity for you to upload any relevant materials related to the project, like links to the videos or actual videos or pictures related to the grant. And that's it. So this is the end of interim reporting. Fairly simple reports, nothing too complicated. This is a final report reminder. Again, the subject line indicates which report for which cycle. And the only difference in this email is if the awarded funds have not been fully expensed, or if the project changes have not been approved, please do not submit the report. Because you will waste your time filling out the report only to have it reverted and redo the report. So as soon as you realize that your project has not been fully expensed, or if there are any activities that have not been completed, please reach out to me or the QOL email box, and we will take the necessary steps to move this project forward. So the intent of the final report is to provide an all-inclusive accounting of Reeve funding in the narrative, as well as the financial expenditures. Again, relative to what was proposed or pre-approved goals, revised goals, objectives, and budget. So the first item for the final report, again, same as before, project name, amount awarded will all be pre-populated. Again, there's another reminder within the report itself: do not complete this report if the funds have not been fully expensed. And as before, this is a project completion question. If your project is completed, select yes and enter any in the next question. If no, you would explain, select no, and then you would explain why it is not completed. Okay. Project changes. As discussed earlier, here is where you will note the approved changes to the project, including the way the program was delivered, budget changes, no cost extensions, etc. Statewide, the changes were needed. For an example, again, a budget revision, the actual cost of the equipment purchased was less than anticipated or budgeted, which resulted in a savings of, I don't know, X amount. The approval was given to the foundation to redirect the saves from equipment to contractors to offset the cost of certified fitness trainer. Again, that's one example of what a response would look like in this section. The next item is project goals. Proposed project goals will be pulled in from your application and pre-populated. However, if the goals were revised, then you would need to refer to the revision documents and add the response in the narrative. So the next question here. So now the previous item included and pulled in all the proposed goals. In this section, you would include the actual results against each of the proposed goals, the year-to-date accomplishments, the outcomes achieved, and so on. So what would be an example? Increased accessibility to the community center to benefit 30 people with paralysis by replacing a ramp. If that was your goal that was identified on the proposal, then your response would look something like: the ramp was purchased and installed to ensure accessibility and benefited 30 people with paralysis. If, on the other hand, if this goal was partially met, then your response would be: the ramp was purchased and installed to ensure accessibility for 20 people with paralysis instead of 30. The project manager had to take an unanticipated leave of absence, which delayed the project timeline and outreach initiatives, resulting in less than anticipated people served. If you had a goal that was revised, so an example, goal number 2 was revised to benefit 20 people versus proposed 30 people with paralysis due to lack of participants. As a result, exercise training expense was reduced by X amount. Through the approved budget reallocation from the foundation, we were able to purchase additional equipment X. So the gist of it is you go through each of your proposed goals and you state the actual outcomes relative to that goal or any other goal that was revised or amended. Evaluation and project measures is the next section. Again, this information will be brought in from the application. And then your response in the next section will be measured against what was proposed. So our whole thing is if you proposed it, you need to measure it. Measure the output and the outcomes. So an output is like a number, an increase in the number of people served or a number of lessons to be provided, for example. And an outcome is a change in someone's attitude, knowledge, behavior, like an increase in someone's knowledge about a topic or a higher level of satisfaction, happiness, or quality of life. Your response will depend on what was proposed. So for example, if you propose 25 people will receive 100 therapy sessions, equine therapy sessions, and majority will report a positive impact on their health, social interactions, and quality of life, then, whatever method you propose to use, whether it was surveys or actual documentation of some sort, then your response would look like for output, 25 people with paralysis received 100 equine therapy sessions. For outcome, it could be something like 96, 97% of respondents reported a positive impact on their overall health and wellness, or 90% of respondents reported that services received had a positive impact on their interactions and quality of life. If the output was reduced, let's say from 25 to 20 people with paralysis, but the same number of sessions were offered, then you would indicate that and say, although 25 people were expected to participate, but based on early registration, only 20 participated. 5 people with paralysis did not participate due to lack of transportation or caregiver availability. So if you have a variance between what was proposed in terms of numbers, percentages, this is where you would highlight the differences and the reasons for those differences. The next section has to do with the impact, the number of individuals with paralysis proposed, versus actual. This number here, the proposed number will be pre-filled and you will plug in the actuals, and then just like the example how 5 people couldn't make it because of transportation issues or any other issues, this is where you would highlight that reason here. This is the same thing, except this question deals with caregivers and family members of individuals with paralysis. And these numbers are important, both the direct as well as the people with paralysis versus and the people, the number of caregivers and family members, because this information is factored into cost per grant and is reported to ACL when all the grants have submitted their final reports. Cost per person is what I meant to say. Okay. The next question is challenges and lesson learned. So this information in this section lets us know what type of organizations are facing what type of difficulties, how those difficulties were mitigated, and it may support some of the shortcomings of your proposed activities. So this is where you would state the challenges or difficulties encountered during the project. By way of example, you could have staffing changes, lack of participants, contractor issues, availability of equipment issues, and how you overcame them. It could be that you were unable to purchase the proposed equipment, whatever it was, because it was no longer available. And then you can qualify this by saying, after consulting multiple manufacturers, you were able to find a similar equipment with a slight price difference. Regarding lessons learned, so this is where you can share what you have learned as a result of this project. What will you be doing differently going forward? Have you collaborated with different organizations or groups of people that yielded a positive impact on the project and or your processes? What worked and what didn't work? So a sample response would be, additional collaboration has had a significant impact on our program by increasing demand for the services we provide. Or our outreach efforts led to the formation of a new partnership with organization ABC. Through this partnership, we increased awareness of our services and our clients, and demand for services increased by X percentage, 10%, 20%, it could be whatever it is. We were able to serve X more number of clients than originally proposed as a result. We will continue to build upon this partnership beyond the grant period. So that's a sample response for lesson learned. Next item is financial reporting. Again, just a reminder, please use the Excel file that's on the dashboard. And honestly, this is the first form I look at. If the budget doesn't match, or if there's a balance remaining, or if there's an expense without approved budget for it, then the report is reverted to draft, and the applicant will need to resubmit it with the corrected file. And to be absolutely transparent, this expense file continues to be the #1 reason for rejecting the submitted report. Although since we've started sharing the expense file on your dashboard, the incidence of denying the report or reverting them to draft has been on the decline. But just to make sure that the file attached is not a blank file, and you should be good. So some examples of reporting expenses. So this expense file for $10,000 budget would not be accepted, and the report we need to be reverted because there's a $500 balance remaining. It could be that the person who filled out this form made a mistake and entered the wrong amount, or the amount expensed is correct and there is a genuine balance of $500 remaining. So if, in the first case, if that was an error, it's a quick fix, right? The file gets updated and everything matches, and the balance remaining is zero. So this is a good to go file. If, on the other hand, there is a genuine balance remaining, then we would need to figure out how the remaining balance will be expensed. And do we need to revise the budget, or do we need to extend the project timeline? ACL really discourages us from extending the project beyond 3 to 4 months. So we try our level best to make sure that everything ticks and ties or is in place by the due date of the final report, and not to extend the project any further than additional 3 to 4 months. So with all open balances, you would need to send me an email, and preferably you will not be submitting a report with an open balance, but if you do, again, I will have to revert this, and you will need to submit an email with a new timeline, the reasons for the revision and its impact on the project. Upon review of the request, a budget revision and or a no-cost extension would be issued. So in that same example, the $10,000 budget was received because if that $10,000 budget was revised and there is a genuine balance of $500, then an expense file that was submitted after the budget revision was done that looked like this would not be accepted because there is no revision. This is the originally approved grant amount of $10,000. There's no reallocation elsewhere within the project. But if, let's say, we had allocated $500 from the equipment, and an example again would be, let's say they received a $500 discount from the vendor. So the actual cost of the equipment came in at $9,500, leaving you a balance of $500. So then you would request to move the $500 to, let's say, personnel. And so we had moved approved budget revision. This is the new column. The $500 in personnel, leaving $9,500 in the equipment line. Here, the budget is itemized properly, and the balance remaining is zero. Again, this is a very simplistic example, but it proves the point. So let's see. All right, the next, so for clarity, we have a way to revise the budget and request a no-cost extension. So in the email, you would explain the need of why the revision is needed. Depending on the situation, the reallocation may or may not impact the project timeline, especially if when you switch equipment, let's say, which may be dependent on availability or the program delivery. And you may not need some additional time, then you wouldn't need it. But let's say if in the same situation, if you needed some lead time to prepare receipt of the equipment, or, you know, lay the foundation to house that equipment, or some other issue, then that may impact your timeline and may need a revised budget because of pricing changes and extension on the project timeline. So that's what you would indicate on the email. If everything else is good, and if there's no other questions, everything is resolved, then we would have no issues in issuing a no-cost extension and a budget revision. So let's look at some of the examples of reallocating some budgets. So say you wanted to reallocate $3,000 from consultant to an executive director line with no impact on the timeline. So your request would state something like, I don't know, due to an emergency, the consultant is no longer available to provide exercise instructions. Our executive director is a certified instructor and will offer remaining classes in-house. As such, we would like to reallocate the remaining $3,000 from consultant line. So currently the consultant line, as per the approved grant agreement, is $4,000. You would like to reallocate $3,000 from this line to this line here, the executive directors. So, and it's just a simple reallocation with no impact on the timeline. So in this case, we would only issue a budget revision and not an extension with it. So a 3,000 increase in personnel would mean it went from 8,000 overall personnel budget to 11,000. This line here. So 5,000 to 8,000, adding 3,000 and overall increasing it to 11,000. And then the 4,000 was reduced to 1,000. And this assumes that the consultant line had incurred $8,000 expenses prior to leaving the program. Hence, there's a balance of 1,000 remaining in this category. Just to be clear, if you reported something as being expensed, that expensed amount cannot be reallocated. So we need to be careful when requesting a budget revision. If you already reported to us that $1,000 or $2,000 were expensed in a given line, you must leave that amount in that line. That amount cannot be reallocated. And please note that the overall awarded amount of $24,000 does not change. So it's just shifting from one category to another with a change in the categories themselves, but the overall amount remains the same. So once I receive the request and this file, if everything is okay, the budget revision is approved, the requester is notified, and we would update this revised budget on your dashboard. And when completing the final report, you would include this budget narrative under the project changes and use the revised budget expense as your starting budget and report expenses against the revised budget. But if there was an impact on your timeline, then your request would also include something like, due to this change, our project timeline has been extended by 3 months and would like to request 3-month no-cost extension. This will allow us to fully expense the funds and increase the number of people served from 30 to 38, let's say. In this case, we would authorize a no-cost extension along with the revision approval. And then, of course, again, you would have to include the change in the narrative. Additional material, and this is the end of the final report. This is where you would include video links, videos, photographs, and anything that relates to the project. And then at the very bottom here, you will see an impact evaluation. This evaluation is conducted by Vanderbilt. All this information is collected and compiled and reported to ACL by an outside firm, Vanderbilt, who will submit their report based on your evaluation to ACL. And that's it. And that concludes the reporting webinar. I hope this presentation was helpful. My team and I are here to help and assist you in any way we can. Now let's see if there's any questions.
Most questions have been answered, but I think one that merits going back to is in the case of not all funds being expended at the end of the project, they want to confirm that we need to let no stating that the project has not been completed, and then send an email to request an extension.
All right, so whenever, just to clarify again, whenever a project final report is due on a project and there is balance remaining, do not submit the report. Send an email to me, ppatel@reeve.org, with the need. Why is the project not complete? What is the new timeline? The anticipated date of completion, and what is the balance remaining, and what is your proposal to fully expense the remaining funds?
The other question is, do we need to be submitting receipts?
No, we do not look for receipts. We don't check your books, none of that stuff. Everything is faith-based honor system. Sorry, I missed the beginning. Can you tell us again how to access your dashboard? Our dashboard. So let's go back to the beginning. So no matter which report you are filing, there's an email that each applicant received 30 days prior. And then within that email, there's an embedded link to the grants portal right here in the blue text, which says grants portal. If you click there, it'll bring you to your dashboard. But first you need to log in, and this is what a login screen looks like. Again, the QOL ChristopherReeve.org email is who you should contact if you're having difficulties logging in. And once you log in, this is what you would see. This is your dashboard. Presentation. Yes, right. We will send the link to the presentation. All right, so not bad in terms of timing. All right, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, please reach out to me, ppatel@reeve.org or QOL@reeve.org for all your questions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.